Glow, A Tale of the Winding Way, written by Eliza G.W.R. Glow. I lead this one away from the pool to a fork, the path split in twain. Down one path a road lined with gold and decadence, a road more beautiful than anything they had likely seen in life. Down the other path, cave cast, like the inside of a simple church made of wood dropped from the trees rather than from lumber harvested in the fields. As the one I led looked down the road and waited, two beings appear. One, a brilliant light, brighter than anything seen before. The other, a great darkness veiled in a thin light. It then asks a question to them, one that I cannot hear. After hearing the answers, the soul makes its choice, the final choice it will ever make. As the soul I led begins down the path, I see their choice, the road of decadence, a road of sin. I close my eyes in sadness as the road becomes twisted in darkness, and the soul is devoured, taken into the depths as the false road of gold and glitter becomes a road of death and decay. Once more, I have watched this happen. Once more, a soul is lost. The brilliant light approaches me and says, "This is what is meant to be." He waves his hand, and I find myself once more no longer on the road. For this was the 99th soul I have led down the path that chose the wrong road. I have led 99 to both, and beyond that, I have but one more soul to lead. One more soul until my time on the road is finished. One more to either heaven or hell. As I return to the world of the living, I look around the hospital to which I am bound, the people always bustling around. Each time I find myself losing a little hope that I will ever make it to the gates of heaven, for the nature of man is what it is. That is what those words mean to me. No matter how many I lead, it will always be the sinister ones that choose hell and the righteous that choose heaven, the light of their hearts already having chosen their path. Still I continue, with nothing but the final one. One more until I am released. As I watch the door, the notice comes, the sound that always comes. The sound came from outside, that sound always piercing the air as it drew closer. Outside the stone and brick walls of the place I awaited, that light and sound, another was on the way. Would this one be fading, or would their glow be strong? Every time I heard the siren or saw the flashing lights, I wondered this, trapped between here and there. The blue and white is pulling up again, lights flashing, sirens blaring, another light fading. The curse of those who took their own lives, unable to choose their path, destined only to wait for those whose time had come, to watch over them as the glow of their souls dim around the body and take their leave of the flesh. It was endless torture, the fate given to us that chose to end our own lives. The sounds fade, yet the lights continue. I can see it through the glass doors through which I cannot pass. The urge to attempt running through the doors rises in me once again. It happens every time the light comes through the door. Yet I sit and watch, bound to this place as I am. The hospital walls, my prison on earth, unable to be seen or heard by the living as I wander the halls. The door swings open, and I can see the glow begin to fade, the light becoming visible, the dark light that reveals the dead. Every time I wish the glow would strengthen and the life restored, all so they don't have to make the choice, the terrible, final choice that awaits them in the next life. I may wish, but that is all I can do. Sit, wait, and hope. I see the light, the dark light of death, recognizable only to me, for that's how it works. When someone dies, ones who took away their own precious gift of life, this one I'm supposed to follow and help on their way. I look into his past, a life of greed and avarice, of pain and anger, a man so filled with love of himself and money that he cannot see all the good in his life. He turned away all the good in his life, in the pursuit of being on top. This one needs all the help he can get along that road, the winding way that leads to the crossroads. Slowly, I follow this one down the hall. This one's light grows as it moves to an empty room, the glow gathering at the point of exit. His glow would soon be ready to leave the vessel which carried it. I watch as several other stronger glows converge around him. With machines, they briefly cause his glow to strengthen. It is of little use. In a few minutes, the dark light would overtake his body and his life would cease. I sit and wait, his glow becoming dimmer and dimmer until it vanishes. It wouldn't be long now until the glow left the body. As I watch the body, I hear one of the other glows say that dreadful phrase, call it, a phrase that I've come to despise. I wait as the others leave the room, covering the body filled with the dark light of death. I remain. The time feels longer than it actually is. As I wait for the reappearance of the glow, gradually, the glow flickers back, rising up from the dead body, the glow taking the form of a man beside me. He no longer looks like the man he was before death, but at the point of his life that he felt to be his prime. He looks strong, kind, but with a sinister look beneath his eyes, the kind of eyes a man who had broken himself would have. He stares at me, a questioning look, but I can tell he understands. He is dead, and I am his reaper. I raise my hand and wave. The surroundings then change. No longer in that place, the hospital of brick and stone. Laid out ahead of us is a road, long and twisting, longer than any road existent in the living world, known to all who walk along the path as the Eternity Road, the winding way that lay on the other side. I motion with my hand, beckoning him to follow me down the road. The road twists and turns for as many days as he who walked it lived. A mile an hour they lived. As I lead him down the road, he stops to drink from a pool of water. As he reaches his hand down to drink, images appear in the pool. The pool is the mirror of choice, a chance for one to see the choices they made and how they affected those around them in life. Many find themselves at this place for more than a while, wishing to see what they could have done better, but the images never come. As the water swirls, the first image of his past appears, a life of love, caring for his siblings after the death of his parents, working constantly to ensure they had food, a place to live, and clothes to wear. The image fades and another appears, a first love in the spring of adulthood, thanks to a chance encounter with a lovely young woman. A third set of visions appear, that of 3 children born of love, raised by caring parents. A hard life, but one filled with love and compassion. Once more the reflection alters, the new image that of a dark day, a loss of light in the man's life, to the day of a major accident that led to the unavoidable death of his family. I feel a chill down my spine as I see the family of the man. I have seen them before, led them down the winding way so many years ago, one of my jobs as a reaper of souls, a guide down the Eternity Road. I watch as the pool turns black, the choices he made past that day influencing the ethereal waves within. The chaotic emanations like that of a tumultuous riptide, an unceasing spiral of chaos as the darker parts of his past came to light. All the pain and suffering he caused others throughout his years, the memories beginning with a surge of energy, like lightning bursting forth through shattering the calm air. The first of the dark images begins, as through cutthroat business tactics, the man that once had little more than his family meteorically rises to the top of a major company. He sees hundreds laid off from his work, whole families out on the streets through his actions, a series of pink slips sent out from his desk. He sees a former friend, a man once dear to his heart, living on the street corner, begging for change in order to have food for his next meal as he walks past him, unwilling to lend aid. The series of dark events felt as if a searing pain was driven into his heart. A wash of guilt covered his face as he tore the jacket his soul wore and threw it over the pool, hoping to hide his sins from his eyes. It was of little use and for nothing. I have already seen his virtues and vices, his sins and his generosity. Yet the act proved the man felt guilt at his actions. Along the path the road jutted upward, a hill that represented the struggles the man faced in his life. The hill was jagged, some rather sharp, others rounded. Unlike me, the man must climb the hill, the only way forward. For what happens should he not climb? Far worse than could be imagined. But I know. It was worse than the fate given to those who took their own life from this world. His arm shaking, I watch as he reaches out for the first outcropping, one of the smooth, jagged stones, only for him to reel back in pain. I knew that would happen. The stones of regret only allowed you to climb the stones that were sharp. Several times, the man attempted to reach out for one of the smooth stones to climb the hill, finally coming to the conclusion to grab one of the sharp stones. As his first hand grabs the stone, a flood of sorrow and pain fills him as the stone cuts into his hand, a great remorse for being unable to save the lives of his family filling him, like a thorn in his mind as the rocks press into his soul. Little by little, one stone at a time, the man climbed the hill, each stone filling his mind with remorse from each of the actions he regretted in his past. By the time he reaches the top of the hill, his hands are shredded. If souls could bleed, his hands would be pouring blood. I let him rest. Of the 6 challenges before the crossroads, the regret that filled him likely causing more than a little pain to his soul. It was not the most dangerous of those that he would face, but by far the most taxing on a soul. I know he will recover. They all do. But for each, the time it takes is different, depending on the regrets that lay within them. In the distance, the path behind darkens, the entryway already gone. For reapers, it is a sign. If the darkness reaches their charge, the choice is made. The darkness created by the amount of willingness in their heart to continue. The less will, the more darkness. For there are 2 ways to become a reaper: to take your life, or to refuse to move forward, though the ones that refuse to move have a worse fate as reapers. While for those who took their life, they must escort 100 people before making their own choice. Those who refuse to make their choice have none of their own. They must escort 100 souls to either heaven or hell, and for whichever one makes 100 first, that is the place they must go. As the man rose, ready to continue along his path, I watched as the man continued along the path, the trials ahead much more threatening to a soul so dark. As always, the path twisted and turned, leading into the forest of wants, an expansive forest where the path lay visible to the eye, save for where it exits. The trees of the forest grow any and everything the heart wanted in avarice throughout life, to draw the soul away from the path, though the things they wanted to love lead the path through. As a spirit guide, a reaper of souls, I am forbidden to help. Yet the act of watching souls lost in the forest, wandering for what seemed eternity, was a torture. For many, it wound up wasting their will, causing them to remain in the forest as the darkness approached, turning them into reapers as well. For a reaper, it was a torture to watch, for any soul that doesn't make a choice doesn't count. The man, having the deep regrets from his life seemingly still weighing on his mind, seemed to instantly seek out the wants of love. He followed the images of his parents, his siblings, his wife, his children, his abandoned friends. The various parts of love in his heart led him quickly through the forest, forsaking money, power, all the things he sought after he lost them all. He made his way through the forest faster than any I had ever guided before. In the sky I looked behind. The darkness had barely moved, the man's will seemingly increasing by what grew in the forest. In fact, it almost looked as though the darkness had receded. Drawing on the indomitable force of the human soul, The man began to move forward again, faster than he had before. Yet I feel sorry. The man had only gone through half the challenges of the soul, and the one before the crossroads was the worst by far. Although neither night or day exists within the realm of the dead, the part of the road known as the Marsh of Despair is what one would could be called night. Not as long as the mountain, nor as expansive as the forest. The marsh is short, but the trouble is what lay beneath. Every bit of despair in a heart will drag those that walk through the marsh down. For me, I always feel a sense of dread at the marsh, a deep feeling in the pit of my stomach. Unlike the others, the marsh reacts to all who cross, not just those walking the path, although for reapers the marsh doesn't pull them down. The sorrow in my heart, greater than any of those that guided the cross. I watch as the man begins his walk across the marsh. The same things that gave him strength in the last of the challenges, now dragging him down. The sorrow of losing his family and friends, the sorrow of those he had put out on the streets, the sorrow of a life spent with a heart hardened to the world. With each step, the imagined arms of the sorrow began to pull him deeper into the marsh, the sorrow in the swamp gradually breaking his will. On the other side of the swamp I waited with despair. With each step it looked like the man would break down. Yet with each step he persevered, his body mostly under the swamp by the time he made it halfway. Still he struggled, attempting to make his way across. He was possessed by a will hidden by a hardened heart. By sheer strength of that will, the man clawed his way up from the murky depths, reaching for the other side, as if determined to be reunited in the other world with his family. The man's soul was as strong as a human soul could be, determined, yet as he passed each challenge, the sinister look in his eye began to diminish, as if the true heart was slowly being released. If the things he was realizing on his walk had happened on earth, back when he was alive, the trials of the winding way would have diminished, the path easier to tread as it had been for his family. I berate myself. One cannot dream of could be and might have been when reality stares them in the face. If prayers were heard from this area between, I would drop to my knees for all of my charges before the next test. For while the marsh, cliff, and forest tested the will of those who walked the winding way, the fifth challenge did little more than punish them for their worldly sins. A barren plain stretched as far as the eye can see, devoid of any visible obstacle amongst the tall grassland. Yet the blades hid a secret. The plains designed to force what they had done to others, administered to them by visions of the ones they loved. An endless field designed to make you feel the sting of cruelty you showed to others in the worst possible way, through the worst pain in the world, betrayal. For nothing cut deeper a wound than the act of betrayal, and a field devoted to making you feel as though you had committed cruelty against your loved ones and them having retribution, not through the same act, but through what could only be described as the cut of a whip. I watch as the man takes his first step into the field, his body dropping to the ground as a large crack broke the air, tearing the clothes his spirit had conjured away from his body. Before him stood the image of his wife, her hands red with blood, matching the marks that tore the clothes from his body and slashed at his skin. Her fingers had extended like the tendrils of a whip and slashed away at his skin and bone. Climbing back to his feet, another crack forced him down again. In rapid succession they came, one after another, the man barely able to crawl as they continued. Surrounding him, twisted personas of his wife, children, siblings, parents, and friends, all those he cared for throughout life. With every motion they struck him, sloshing away at his soul. It was the most I had ever seen someone suffer as they made their way the plains. The man must have caused more misfortune than even he was aware of. where the spiral of misfortune had spun from him, went to the families of those he hurt. As he slowly crawls forward, I rise to see the darkness. While before it had receded so far, it was nearly gone. Now it had already covered the forest, the plain striking deep into his heart. With no hesitation, he rose to his feet, only to stumble to the ground. He had lost much of his strength, yet his will was regaining strength. In the distance, the darkness receded once more, back to beyond the mountain. The man's will was indomitable. Had his family not died and his heart hardened, he would have been a great man in the world, a kind leader, possibly a greater man than many who had come before him. Rapidly the darkness moved, the man lying in the field, his strength near gone, the plain nearly crossed. I cannot interfere. That is the rule, for there are no rules against providing motivation. At the other end of the field I wave my hand, an image of his past life flooding his mind, the love of his family. As if drawing into the deep recesses of his heart, the man struggles to his feet, slowly moving as the cracks strike him again and again. Though his pace is slow, the man continues, unwilling to let it end in the field. I silently think I should have let him be. For one to have suffered that much in the field, his actions at the next challenge seemingly obvious. Most who suffer such pain in the field have done so before, and afterwards their choice was almost always the same. Yet as I watched the man drag himself out of the plains, back onto the winding way, I hoped things would be different. The look in his eyes already completely changed from how he had once looked. Struggling to his feet, a fire lit in his eyes, one of determination to see his family once more. I watch as he takes his steps forward, one at a time, the damage his soul had taken being cored to its rawest form, slowing him down, yet also increasing the man's will to continue. One step after another he continued, at every turn of the winding way, his body struggling to follow the ever-twisting road. If I had not been there, if I had not been witness to the strength of will a man so cruel had hidden deep within his heart, I may not have believed it myself. In my life, I had always viewed mankind as cruel by nature, with no goodness inside. The length of time I spent in the other world working the winding way had changed my view. But this man not only changed my view, but how I perceived the true nature of man. It seemed as days by the time the man approached the sixth test of the winding way, a choice of memory. Like the first challenge, another spring appeared before him, this time beside an empty pool. Touching the spring, the knowledge of the test entered his mind. Inside the pool were the memories of all those whom he had heard, and the other pool, a place to remove all the memories of his life. It was his choice, to accept the burden of his actions in life, or to forget not only the burdens of life, but the damage of the trials on the winding way. Those who had suffered less than him, but more than others, almost always chose to empty their memories into the empty pool, rather than drink from the spring. As he bent over, I watched as the man dove into the spring, the water being sucked down into him, as he cringed in pain inside the spring. He had given away any chance he had for the pool. To release his pain, he accepted what he'd done even more than most who had committed little sin. His body shaking, he rose from the now empty spring, his body racked with emotion as he attempted to stand straight. With little regard to his own soul, he had taken a burden most would think twice before doing. He had accepted what he had done, and taken the burden upon his own shoulders. For now he could not continue. He needed time to rest. Though his soul still had the will, the continuously receding darkness told that tale. As the man laid beside the pool, I looked once more into his heart, the darkness that had corrupted him for so long. He had both inwardly and outwardly become the man he had longed to be. I cursed myself for not having had a charge like him earlier. If I had, well, that's not for now. As I wait for him to awaken, I wonder if maybe this was to show me, as well, the capability of man when pushed to their limit. I thought back to my own life. It had been miserable. The raids had taken all I cared for, my family, my home, and my hopes. I was alone, on the streets. After several weeks, I couldn't handle it any longer. As the sirens filled the air, the sounds of explosions all around, I used my father's gun and took my own life. Had I known the fate that awaited me, I would have pressed on until I died of starvation. The man wakes, and I lead him from the spring to the crossroads, the final choice of the winding way. For at the crossroads, the long and winding road splits in twain. Down one a road paved by gold and shining gems brighter than the sun. Down the other, the beauty of nature, an old road with healthy earth and strong fruit-bearing trees. As the man stares down the two roads, a brilliant light, for him likely brighter than any he had ever seen before, appears, leading two beings, one standing before each road. I know the routine. I have done this many times before. The man is offered a question, any one to both beings, one I am forbidden from hearing. Many times I have watched people ask the wrong question. Those times where people head down the wrong road, the path twisting into darkness, swallowing those foolish enough to follow their sin, swallowed by it, taken to the place where no light exists. I watch the man as the silent words flow from his mouth, a silence that causes one of the individuals to smile and the other to grimace in anger. The one before the golden road changes, its true form revealed, the false beauty of its exterior overtaken by its dark inner form. As if waiting for the darkness to reveal itself to the man, the entity on the dirt road steps aside afterwards. The man's family standing at the back of the road, looks of love on their face. The man proceeds to head towards the dirt road and stops, looking at the gentle entity in front of the road. He is unsure if he belongs there with all he has done in his life, but the entity assures him he is welcome. As he heads further down the road, the light approaches me, a look of kindness and of sorrow on his face. It is what it is meant to be. The words fill me with hope, for I have done most of what I have been asked, but I am not done yet. Mine has been one of the longest a reaper has walked the way. The road designed to generate reapers, for limbo is the very nature of the winding way, and only allows those who have an inner desire to move on can. Those who are unsure, those who cannot escape their fate, are doomed to walk it, and I am bound twice. I hesitated again. For decades I walked the way after my death, fulfilling my quota of 100 souls down the road. Though I had completed the task, I was distraught. The road had not shown me my way, and I was unwilling to take the test. For that I was bound again, and since then I had led 99 souls to hell as well as 99 souls to heaven. And more than that, unwilling to walk the road. The man I had just led, my salvation into heaven. Yet as the entity stood before me, I hesitated again. In my years I had come to realize the nature of the road. Eternity Road was a torture many could not stand. As I looked him in the eyes, I knew he saw what I did. A wish to not go to heaven yet, but to remain, to continue to lead those who need it down the road. More than that, the ability to aid those who need it down the road, not by much, but by enough that the endless cycle of the winding way would find its close. The entity smiles at me, having known my wish all along, the wish I would make after my endless ordeal. With the touch of his hand, I am changed. My appearance no longer a shade of my human self. My body luminous, my soul strengthened. As I watch him leave, I feel the emergence of wings upon my back. The entity has changed me. No more am I a reaper bound to walk the way. I am a true guide, set forth to aid those who need it along the way. I wave my hand and find myself in the world of the living, no longer bound to the hospital of which for so long I have waited. As the sun rises through the door, I spread my wings, ready to soar, to find those who are about to die, those who need a guide more than most, and offer my aid. I have viewed many things in my time bound to the road, strong souls, weak souls, the grand light of the entity, the dark light of death, the false light of the man on the sin road, and his true form. For a long time I myself was without the glow of a soul, as all reapers are, mere pale shades of their former selves. Now I am no longer a shade, but an angel of hope, a guide down eternity road, a guide to lead people along the path they wish, and hold the darkness that attempts to take them at bay. Once I was one of thousands, those who had taken their own lives, those who had refused to walk the winding way and found themselves bound to the road. No, I am no longer bound, no longer one of thousands, but reborn, a brilliant new light to lead the way. From this day on, I am no longer an angel of death, but a beacon of hope. I have regained more than my light, more than the glow of my soul. It has returned a tenfold. More than that, I have regained the one thing lost to all reapers. My name, Lucia.